Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. This is the Future Conflict channel. My name is Watcher, and I'm here with author Blaine Pardoe to do a little bit of a fan book club. As soon as I can get the echo out of my ear that hopefully you guys can't hear. There we go. Thanks for being here, Blaine. We really appreciate you. Guys,
Well, it's always great to do these things. I like talking about what I write.
And guys, the chat, thank you guys so much for being here. If you guys have any questions, and let me start by saying this. If you guys want to participate in a voice chat capacity, and you've been a long-time viewer of the show, I'm not going to limit this to just members, but if you'd like to participate in a voice chat capacity, go over to our Gilded server, which you guys probably don't check enough, and hit me up with a DM. And I will send you guys a link so that you can participate when the time is appropriate. We're going to get through like a spoiler-free sort of thing that people that are watching this later can know, hey, I could listen to this and get enticed. And then this is where I dip out so that I don't ruin it for myself. Planet says, here for the book club, but you forgot the wine and cheese. You got a few minutes. If you've already read it, you got a few minutes. So you go grab that. You need your refreshments, man. Although I will say, like, the only actual physical book club I ever went to, they had bacon jelly, and I've never had that before, and it was amazing.
I didn't bring anything to eat or drink other than my Dr. Pepper.
Oh, Sniper in the chat says, resist the FedGov. Yes, sir. Okay, guys. So, like I said, we're going to get into essentially first. I'm going to ask Blaine, do you want to go through essentially like a spoiler-free kind of synopsis of your book before we get started for anybody who hasn't already read it, so they can kind of get a little taste and we can say, hey, pause and dip out?
Sure. It's an alternate history book, and it really takes things from a very different perspective. It assumes that in 2020, the progressives violently overthrow the government, killed the president, which is shocking, and implement a progressive state in the United States. And the book is really set 5 years after that series of events. So you see 5 years of what a progressive totalitarian regime actually would look like in our country. And it's the story of a group of characters who are kind of inadvertently drawn together to try to reestablish the United States of America. America has been corrupted and turned into something called New America. And history's been erased, flag's gone, your national anthem's gone, your holidays are gone. They've all been replaced with progressive replacements. Conservatives have been sent off to social quarantine camps, for their own protection, of course. The police forces have all been nationalized into the National Security Force. Everything that you remember about your history of our country is gone. It's been replaced with basically a rebooted template for New America. And it's the story of the people who rise up to decide, we've had enough of that. And it's not so much that they're trying to roll the clock back as much as they're trying to get back to some sense of normalcy, whatever that is. And it's a fun romp in a different alternate history universe. However, it's based so much on real life stuff that bleeds into a lot of the text, and that's part of the fun of it. Was that close enough without spoiling?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Now, I do have a few other spoiler-free questions that I'm going to ask before we kick the other people out. And by the way, chat, there's a poll there in the YouTube chat. And by the way, hi over on Rumble. Good to see you over there as well. Sorry, I can't do a poll over there. But go ahead and answer it. Who's read the book and who has not? All right. So before we get any further, I think the biggest one I want to ask, and by the way, chat, again, we're going to give you the ability to ask questions, but I get to go first because I have the microphone. Can I ask you what historical events, or I should say, what periods in time and sort of places and locations inspired your depiction of what New America looks like, and kind of the action route taken by the FedGov?
It's really interesting because this will surprise people. It's less about American history in this book. The second book we start moving into is a second American Civil War, which obviously I fall back on some of those types of events to weave in. What really is the driver for me was doing some studying into the French Revolution. The French Revolution is an interesting period of time, and if you've studied that period, I'm not going to ruin it for you. Spoiler alert, it's ugly. You have the violent overthrow of the monarchy, and then you have a period where the people who overthrew the government constantly are in search of targets, and they begin to target themselves. And that to me is part of the dynamic that you see unfold, is starting in the first book, but it bleeds through the entire series, is what happens when you run out of targets is you always have to find a new target. There always, with a totalitarian regime, has to be a bad guy. If there's no bad guy, things start falling apart. So it's a constant and progressive move to find new villains and new crimes and new things to be upset and be triggered over. And that's what's going to happen with this whole series, and really happens. I think you see the start of it definitely in Blue Dawn.
Oh, absolutely. I would say I actually got a lot of overtones of some studies that I had about East Germany, and particularly
Well,
a lot of Stasi tactics.
there's definitely the Stasi. I had a friend who went to the Stasi museum and looked up, when I was writing on this, he looked up his name because he had visited East Germany and found out that the Stasi had followed him, and everybody was on the take. Everybody was informing on everyone else. And I had another friend that he's been doing some research for the Senate on reparations. And he was telling me stories of the various schemes that are being looked at in terms of implementing reparations in the United States. And I kind of marry those two things together and really, where you can get reparation points that you can cash in for cash or other prizes. For turning in your neighbors. But, a lot of that came out of COVID as well. I used to live in Michigan, and, I was, a relative sent me a report that, there were people in Michigan during the peak of COVID turning in their neighbors who were outside mowing their lawns because they weren't there, wearing a mask. They were supposed to be indoors. I never thought in many respects that we would see Americans kind of turn on fellow Americans, their neighbors, out of fear. And I think we got a good glimpse into the human psyche during COVID. And it's a creepy thing to see.
Oh, absolutely. Let me bring in Sniper here real quick before I move on. Hey, Sniper, thank you so much for being here, boss.
Hey.
Hi, and I'm going to tell you to put me back in the back until we're after spoiler time, because I know me and I know me and I know me.
Okay,
and I'll be back, guys.
I got you. Good call. Good self-discipline, that man. I like that. All right. So I got to say that it did definitely validate something. I had a teacher who essentially, when I was in high school, did what that I don't know if you've seen this bit that Jordan Peterson has done in many different talks. He's less so now than he used to, but before he got really famous, one of his big things was that whole stand in a room and ask who thinks that they would have been part of the resistance in Nazi Germany, and who thinks they would have been a Nazi. And essentially pointing out that no, almost all of you think you would have been in the resistance, but factually, we can tell you, because it happened in multiple societies, almost all of you would have been Nazis. Almost all of you. And the fact is that it's not what we have made it out to be, right? And I like the way that not only I COVID, but your book and a bunch of other people seem to be exploring this now. It doesn't seem to be necessarily that it's an inherent deficiency in any sort of group of people or an inherent advantage that prevents them from sliding down this path, right? It's all about preconditioning and human nature.
Yeah, I mean, we've been seeing it in the news just this weekend. We have Democratic lawmakers screaming that they have to have censorship of the internet and demanding it. And if they don't get it, they're going to arrest the person who owns the company that's a platform for this.
Yeah.
Never in my thought, I never would have believed in my country that we would have people, in the government arguing pro censorship, but that's what they're doing with Twitter. And they're saying, no, you've got to block all dissenting voices. You have to drive any dissent into obscurity. And that's something that I definitely played off on in Blue Dawn, but I hadn't planned on it being kind of a blueprint for them to follow.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I think it probably had a lot more to do with a couple of German and French philosophers and their impact on our society than it did Blue Dawn. But
Oh yeah.
we'll get into that soon, I'm sure. Let me ask you, have you received any odd retaliation? Because I know that you were already kind of the subject of some people, but have you received any specifically about this book? And you kind of went into that already, that you have people on the right that have unexpectedly been like, this makes me angry.
Well, I've gotten that. I've had a lot of people say this is QAnon fan fiction. It's Proud Boy porn. It's all this stuff, but it's always by people who are unverified, non-verified Amazon purchases. They didn't buy the book. They didn't read the book. They just are mounting whatever they can in terms of feedback to make it sound negative, etc. And then they make it very personal at times. That's surprising to me because it's just stupid. It's fourth grade childish kind of stuff. That surprises me that people would stoop to that kind of idiocy, but given our culture right now, honestly, it's not that surprising. I've dealt with my own cancellation. Blue Dawn was not mentioned specifically as a reason for me to be canceled, but my politics definitely was a driver in that.
Oh, certainly.
And, it was, and I was told as much. So it's very frustrating to see some of that. Nothing entirely shocks me much anymore. I hate saying that. I've been through a lot in the last year or so, and I've seen mankind at its best and its worst. So I'm
Blaine,
prepared.
I'm 100% with you on that. I used to scoff at that whole saying, "There's nothing new under the sun." I mean, as it was said many thousands of years ago when it was said, but the facts are, we tend to just see new rehashings of old ideas over and over and over again, old bad ideas. I do want to say that Chat earlier mentioned something, and I'm sorry, Chat, I had let it slip past, and now I can't find it. But somebody said they tried to cancel him, and like Obi-Wan, he came back more powerful than they could possibly imagine.
Yeah, pretty much. My wife and I've been talking about it, and she's like, cancellation was the best thing that ever happened to you. You were reaching a wider audience. You don't have anybody woke who's editing your stuff, who's trying to check off boxes and things along those lines, which I was encountering when I was a catalyst. And you're reaching a bigger audience. You're going to make more money. You're writing stuff you like to write, and I'm writing more of it. So I think the woke cancel mob that came after me failed abysmally. They're still trying. I mean, a couple of them actually reached out to the company that I own. I'm one of the owners of Creative Juggernaut, and tried to get me to cancel myself. Going, hey, you shouldn't have Blaine Pardoe working for you. And I was like, let me respond to that one. Are you a freaking moron? I'm one of the owners of the company, and I have news for you. I'm not going anywhere. And I think that's part of what the cancel mob wants, is they wanted you to not have a voice. They want to smother you. They want to silence you. And I refuse to capitulate. I'm not going to play by their rules. They can play by mine. They can dance to my tune.
Certainly. Yeah, these ideological children of Hegel. Yeah. We'll push on. I guess I think I've got one more. Oh yeah. Last thing before we move into the nons or the spoiler filled section. Any praise for the book that has surprised you? Did you have anybody say, "Hey, I've read this and I really like it," that you were like, "Whoa, that's kind of shocking"?
I've had a couple of politicians reach out to me and say they've read the book, which has been very nice. And out of courtesy for them, I'm not going to say who
Oh,
they
certainly.
are and things along those lines, but that's been very nice.
Oh, see, I was wondering if there was anybody off the leftist side of the author page who was like, "Oh, he's terrible and I hate him and his ideas are terrible." But this is actually a really good, like this scene right here was actually.
No, the left doesn't pay compliments. The left is only spewing vitriol at this point. And yeah, I've been waiting for a call from AOC. I desperately am looking forward to that discussion, but it hasn't happened yet. And I think part of it is they don't want to give any, the minute they speak out about somebody, they're really kind of giving them credibility. And I don't think they want to go down that path.
I think that's accurate. I think that's probably why I haven't seen a whole lot of massive attacks on your book, which stinks, Blaine, because that's some of the best marketing you get.
Look, when and if we can drift a little bit into book 2, I gotta be honest with you. In A Most Uncivil War, my favorite scene was putting a bullet in Nancy Pelosi's head. I mean, to say that I didn't enjoy that a little bit was incorrect.
Yeah, I was reading book 1 and I was like, gee, there's shockingly little about this. It seems like that would have been a fun scene to write. Oh, okay.
Book 2, yeah, I go into it. I'm willing to go there. Let's put it that way. And it's really for art's sake. This isn't about me being a violent person or anything. It's about a form of entertainment. And to a certain degree, I found that to be very realistic how I did that. But that's book 2, guys. So we're a whole different discussion. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll get there after we do several other book clubs for all the other books you wrote in the meantime, or that got released in the meantime. Okay, so I guess there is one last question. And this is one that I wasn't necessarily planning on asking, but it just kind of came up. Are you worried that this might, if things go more rapidly in a Blue Dawn direction, because they do seem to be shifting there, but in a weird kind of fits and starts quickly and then slowly way. Aren't you worried that makes you a bigger target?
I think if you're a conservative today and are at all vocal, you are automatically on a list or a target. AOC said this. She said, we're keeping a list of the Trump supporters, so that we can have retribution. Anybody out, it has nothing to do with Trump. I think they're keeping track of lists of people that they wish to suppress. And we've seen this with the release of the Twittergate materials. They are doing this. It's happening, right? It's been happening all along. They target people and do it automatically. Am I worried? No, because in the greater scheme of things, I'm probably pretty low on the left's pecking order of people that they need to take out, realistically. Mm-hmm. But, let's say that they were to overthrow the government or seize complete control and start rounding people up. I have no doubt that they'd come for me. But I come from hardy stock who would say, bring it the fuck on.
Agreed. I have to toss this one in there. Derna 1804, not an actual spoiler, says plot twist: Pelosi sweater puppies were actually grenades. No one saw it coming.
No one saw it coming.
And with that said, if you are here and you're listening and you have not yet read and or listened to the book, because remember, the Audible version is actually quite excellent. People have mentioned that they've bought the Audible version while we're talking here. Enjoy that, because the narrator was well picked and does a fantastic job with that.
Yeah, he's really fun.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and bring Sniper up into here. If you've not yet done so already, this is your last chance. This is your last ditch to get out before the spoilers start flying. Okay. As you guys will notice, I've opened a Q&A there instead of a poll. If you guys want to ask any questions to Blaine in a text format, you can do so there. Once again, if you guys want to join us in a voice format, just hit me up over on our Gilded server. You can either send me a DM or you can just tag me in a post, and I will come and grab you and hand you a link. All right, and with that said, I'm going to move into my first spoiler question, and then we can kind of move on. What was your favorite scene to write? I already know this answer because you've told me in private, but I'd love to get this out there.
There's a lot of scenes that were quote unquote my favorite, but honestly, blowing up the headquarters of Twitter, Google, and Facebook, I really found a great deal of satisfaction in that.
But that's the second book, though, isn't it?
No, it's in the first
that's
book.
book one.
Oh, that's right. It's right at the end. Okay.
Yeah, it's right near the end, and I really enjoyed that. And part of it is, the frustration and angst that a lot of conservatives have been feeling with social media and what's been really revealed through the Twittergate stuff. You realize there's a vast conspiracy against us in many respects, and we're not being crazy. It's real. It's documented, and blowing up those headquarters just felt good.
You're not wrong.
But, that's for me. And I think anybody who's a reader of the series who reads that scene realizes that there's an immense degree of relief and satisfaction in that.
There is one thing I would love to go into here if you're cool with it. And it's the difference is you said you were inspired a lot by the French Revolution. And okay, I get it in certain ways, but China much more applies here. First of all, the Little Red Book itself, I'm going to channel my inner Don, the pleb. The Little Red Book itself literally is the roadmap for how you get to right before this book starts, right? And he lays it out very well in the Little Red Book. But then the way the social justice squads and all of the things, the struggle sessions and all of that, it really comes straight out of China, almost whole cloth. And so I was really surprised to say you took more inspiration from the French Revolution.
Yeah, I'm not a great student of Chinese history, mostly 20th century stuff, and not so much with the Revolution. It's never been my strong area of study, so that's
well, you did it for
through.
not knowing. For not knowing, you did it exactly on point.
Oh, well, in which case, yes, of course, I should have mentioned the Chinese Revolution.
To be fair, like as hard and obscure as it is to even study materials about the French or the Russian or various other terrible revolutions throughout history, the Chinese Revolution is doubly so hard to learn about because of how much of it has been since then redacted, changed, and you have to play this whole minesweeper game of like, even if this is semi-accurate information, which part of it's accurate?
Yeah, that's a fair point. But the struggle sessions they literally they had squads that rounded up people for struggle sessions in public, like the old stocks of the Puritan times, sort of things. And a lot of the people they rounded up at the end of this particular struggle session still got a bullet. So it seemed very much on point, and I was really seeing a lot of China in that I spent a lot of time looking into how that went down, and so it was just a surprising thing. The other thing that kind of surprises me, well, yes, that you waited until the second book to actually put the bullet in Pelosi, but the amount of accuracy to her consumption of vodka is just totally on point.
Yeah, no, I have to ask, were those because somebody recently had done reporting within the last 2 years about how much she drinks. Like, was that coming out before or after you wrote about that?
I've just always assumed she was a drunk, and I went with vodka simply because I assumed she doesn't you don't ever hear people say I could smell it on her breath type thing, and vodka is really good for that.
It's because she's pickled.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I went down that path more than anything.
So so basically you reached it by logical deduction. You're just like,
Yeah,
well, she's obviously a drunk. What is it?
well, if you've ever watched some of her news conferences or listened to them,
Oh yeah,
She's
bombed out of her
obviously
gourd.
she's lit. Yeah.
Well, okay. It depends on the time of day. Early in the day, she's just kind of got a buzz on. By the end of the day, it's like, does she think she's making words?
Yeah.
Now, it's she is Churchillian, and we'll leave it at that.
There we go. The other thing, Blaine, if I may, and then I'm going to be quiet for a little while because I got to do a couple things in here. But you started the book at a different place than where my mind went to, and that is May. I can't remember the day. I can't remember the day itself of 2020. The grounds of the White House are broken, right? And it was something like 30 or 40 federal agents got hurt that night, and so in my own mind, it just kind of jumped to there and went there. But for the grace of God goes this book, right?
Oh yeah.
And so, take a minute for why you decided to not make that their success day, and waited for after the election.
Well, if you look at the American Civil War, what was the trigger point for that started Southern secession? And it was the election of Abraham Lincoln. And the original draft of Blue Dawn, I was going to have the president character, which would have been Trump, be victorious. And that was going to be what triggered the revolt and the uprising against him. The minute I heard the Democrats were all suddenly switching position and were in favor of mail-in voting, I knew that there was no way that that character could win. And I rewrote it as such. It's simply because whenever all of a political party jumps on a bandwagon for something, the fix is in, is my take. And, to me, it was important that he lose and that, we end up with a struggle for the transition of power because Joe Biden is dead as well as Kamala Harris. And I don't dwell on them because I don't want to make them into heroic figures, even for their own cause, although I do come back to it a little bit in book 2. But I think the impetus is whatever the impetus is. It just triggers it. I watched the live footage at Lafayette Park because I live outside Washington, D.C. The local news station was covering it live. We were watching it. They were throwing bricks. They were throwing rocks, pieces of asphalt, frozen water bottles at the police. They immediately...
Don't talk to me about frozen water bottles. I've been on the receiving end of that, and it's on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they went and had this riot. The police responded with tear gas and broke it all up. Trump came out, 45 minutes later and walked over to the church with a Bible and came back.
Correct.
And immediately it became that was why the police attacked and everything else. And I was like, wow, you guys have rewritten the narrative. They never showed after that, when they showed the footage of Lafayette Park, any of the projectiles being thrown at the police. They had literally crafted the story from the footage that they had, and that's what they went with. And, to me, it's very disturbing to see stuff like that. And, it doesn't take a major event to trigger someone to go, let's overthrow this government. And we've all seen how fragile the supply chain is right now. In the last year, I mean, we went through a baby shortage formula, for God's sake. How fragile do you really think our government really is? I think it's just as brittle at this point, probably more so than any point in our history.
You're not wrong. But it just... Oh, go ahead, watch it.
Oh no, you can finish out. I was just going to get to some of these viewer questions.
Oh, okay. It just... for the people who will avoid the whole warning of spoilers, because the 10% of them will. Literally go back to that riot, go back to them breaching the grounds, go back to them injuring 30, 40, 50, I can't even remember the number, of federal agents, go back to them putting Trump in the bunker. That's where this book really starts. You know, he moves the timetable of it, but he takes that night and adds mortars. And and there but for the grace of God. That's really what I got from that. And it was an incredible listen. I will admit I did the Audible.
It's okay.
And I did it at work, and I did them both twice. And yes, you did pick a good guy to do the Audible read. He's better at accents than most of them are. He's very good at that sort of thing. And it made, unironically, it made what happened to be a really rough weekend at work into a much more palatable experience. Just listen to these things.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, that's a good one, man. No, you can
work on
hop back
food.
in. Yeah, I hear
step
that.
back, work on food. I'll be right back.
Okay, we'll see you in a minute, boss. Let's see, Mads. I'm going to ask. I asked you a follow up to your question just to make sure that we get it right, and so I'll come back to yours here in a minute. Let's go to Rick, Duke of Malta, who asks, "Could you talk about Charlie's realization that she was a tool?"
Charlie is one of the more interesting characters. You know, Kaylee is one of my favorites, obviously, but Charlie is interesting because, you know, she goes on a very interesting arc in this book. She starts out being a vigilante. She's hiding undercover. And she has failed. The president has died on her watch, and we learn that in the book. You know, I think she realizes after a while that something has to change. And when Jack Desmond shows up back in her life and says, hey, you know, this is our opportunity, you know, to set things back and set them right. I think that's part of the arc for that character. I don't know if there's a specific moment that she turns. I think Andy turns a lot of Charlie. Andy comes at this with a completely different angle, and her interactions with Andy, I think, change who she is. And you'll see more of that as the series kind of unfolds too. The two of them are it's an interesting dynamic between the two of them. And in many respects, they both need each other. And I think that's important for the characters in terms of their development. So I don't think there's a single thing that makes Charlie feel that she was a tool. Now, Kaylee was definitely, her moment is when they send somebody to kill her. And she realizes, like, they send two people to kill her, and she kills them. And she realizes, like, I've been set up for this whole thing. Kaylee's is a very distinct point. Charlie's is much more subtle. So I don't know if the person asking the question kind of confused the two characters. Happens all the time, but you know, Charlie, you know, is more subtle, but Kaylee, there's nothing subtle at all about Kaylee.
Rick just hops in chat and says, "Oops, I swapped the names."
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
That's okay. That's perfectly fine. Kaylee is she's a great character. I love the fact that she always addresses people very formally, calls them by their last name, you know, Mr. or Ms. or whatever. But she's also a person that when she walks in a room, her first action is to determine, how do I kill all these people so I can get out of here? And I love that about her character.
Yes. And Charlie, don't get me wrong, Charlie is a tool and goes into it knowing she's a tool and what have you, because she's a tool of the system called the Secret Service, and she has all this survivor guilt, which is not earned. You know, she did all the right things.
Well, she took a bullet for the president.
If I may, I actually want to ask about.
And it just wasn't good enough. Right?
So
go ahead.
This allows me to crowbar in two of the more important questions that I had. And one is with Joe Biden, or with Biden dying the way that he does, was that an attempt at hoist by your own petard? Like he's encouraged these policies which have put more criminals on the street. Violent crime has risen exponentially, and it just so happens that, hey, he wasn't even knocked off by a rioter so much as a person who was looting and took advantage of the riots.
Oh, you mean how Trump was killed?
Or sorry, Trump. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I thought it was a little more realistic.
Yeah.
And the government completely would cover it up if they didn't know that he was dead.
Correct.
They would create a story and create a narrative and weave that narrative in. Oh, he was arrested. He had a heart attack while he was in jail. And
oh, that was my favorite. I could picture James Cameron consulting on faking the video of them wheeling him out of there.
Absolutely. Because it doesn't have to look real good. I mean, all you got to do is look at the footage of Lee Harvey Oswald being shot by Jack Ruby. You don't need great footage to make a convincing story.
Right.
And I look at that and go, it's a little more tragic in many respects. He's just killed by a guy who's trying to steal a car.
Yeah.
And happens to go, hey, I know who you are. And next thing you know, boom, he's shot. He does get a great little death scene.
And a very honorable, decent burial, I will say.
I thought that was nice.
For the circumstances,
I enjoyed
yes.
it. There's a lot of geography that comes into play in the Blue Dawn series. Whenever you read one of my books, I'm going to take you all across the country, and I'm going to show you some places that you may not have seen before, as well as some iconic places too. So,
all right, and then that's going to lead me into the second question, which I've already prepped you for.
Oh, go ahead.
Talk to me about writing believable, likable, strong female characters. And where, if I may, because I kind of phrased it wrong in the beginning, where you may feel that you're doing things right, where basically all of Hollywood is really fucking that up really hard.
Geez, that's more fun than the first question. The problem when you write a female character, the fact that they're female is important, but it's not the only thing that defines the character. Being female isn't what makes you who you are. It's the nature of your character itself. And I write about characters that you would want to spend some time with, or that you would absolutely hate spending time with, but you have a passionate response to that character. I think Hollywood screws it up because they go, okay, we have to check off the following boxes. Is this person a certain ethnicity? Is this person is either gay, trans, female? They have to check those boxes. And they say that's how that character is defined. And I'm like, those are all just aspects of the character. They don't define who that character is. And so I just tell stories. And I know that it sounds very simple, but I just tell stories with good characters. And your sexual preference, your being male or female is almost irrelevant. You could change, the Kaylee character to a male character and it would still work. Why? Because it's a great character. And I don't think Hollywood focuses on great characters anymore.
If I may, in fact, kind of back up what you're saying, one of the classic female power roles that everybody likes to try and compare their strong female character to is Ripley. Are you aware, I think most people are, but maybe I'm giving chat some new information, that Ripley was written as a male character and they did not change anything once they cast it as a female?
I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me. To me, I look at that and go, what you need is a strong character. The fact that they're male or female is irrelevant. And if you put a different actor's face on that body or a different body and actor altogether playing that role, it would still be a great character. Right. And I think that's where Hollywood botches this, is they don't look at strong characters. When I did Blue Dawn, I said, I'm going to do an ensemble cast. I can't tell this story from a character's perspective. I have to tell it from a lot of different characters' perspectives. And I think that's important.
Yeah, yeah, it wouldn't work as one character's perspective. It really wouldn't. But going back to the Charlie versus Kaylee thing, Kaylee strikes me as a woman who, at the beginning, knew she was a tool, and somewhere in that progression down that rabbit hole of just being a tool, she forgot that fact until it reached up and bit her in the ass.
Yeah, there's a lot of that with her as a character. I think, we'll learn a little bit more about her background, not a lot, because I could almost do a whole book on her early years before all of this. I think what I like about Kaylee is she enjoys the work she does because she's very good at it. And I've dealt over the years with a number of people in special forces, a couple Navy SEALs I know. They're very good at what they do, and they're very proud of what they do. But a lot of what they do is brutal damn shit, and it's stuff that has to be done. And in many respects, that's kind of how I think Kaylee kind of views herself is I'm just doing what they want me to do, and I just happen to be really good at what I do. It's not until that whole system kind of flips on her and she's like, well, to hell with that.
Yeah. And so, Kaylee is the ultimate. Well, if I'm going to be a tool, I'll be a tool for the people who are the nicest for me. Unironically.
Well, I got the feeling of essentially, if everybody remembers the fantastic show Firefly, and the scene where they flash back to Jane joining the squad, it kind of reminded me of that, just smarter, like just with more intelligence.
Except there was a Kaylee there, and that Kaylee was always a doll.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, one of my favorites. All right, so I'm going to get to some more of these viewer questions. By the way, guys, your questions are really fantastic, and I promise that I'll get to all of them. We're going to let Sniper ask one. I just want to let you guys know, keep them coming in. Also, random string of numbers. You got 2 in a row, so I'm going to take your next one. I'm going to bump it to the end. All right.
No, do the next viewer question, because I have a daughter who just hopped up in my lap.
All right, Alphyrus Omegon says, without giving away too much, are you planning to show the outside world at all? Maybe use an expat or person working in a foreign country and show their POV and how the world is handling the situ.
Yes. At the end of the second book, which is Most in Civil War, you'll get a preview of a character that appears in the next book, which is No Greater Tyranny. And that is a person who's a refugee from Taiwan after Taiwan falls to China. And there's a whole thing about, America not backing its treaty agreements, etc. New America doesn't do that. And Taiwan falls. And so we see this immigrant, a boat person essentially, come to this country, and you'll go through that character's arc in book 4, and it becomes we will see Chinese operatives operating in the United States in book 5. No, they're in book 4. Sorry, they'll be in book 4. So you'll get a good view of this as we move forward. Confederacy is where you're going to get more of Suhi and his background, but you're actually going to get a direct view of China and how they have exploited this and taken advantage of it and continue to take advantage of it, especially when the American Civil War starts again, how they're taking advantage of that, because it's playing right into their hands.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I have a terrorist here who has demanded the ability to say something. Go ahead and say it.
Merry Christmas.
That sounds like subversive activity. Merry Christmas, little one.
Merry Christmas.
Chat. Tell her Merry Christmas, chat.
Indeed. So one more thing, and then, like I said, I got to go do some things, because I'm jumping over here and talking to you, and then I'm jumping over there and doing more prep work. So the character, the Colonel, and remember the Alamo, and how you allude to San Antonio multiple times in the first book.
Well,
right?
that
Like,
probably means we'll get an explanation of what happens later, I'm sure.
yes, you do, and I'm trying to be a good boy. So, so you allude to San Antonio multiple times, and the only thing that strikes me here is how different the governor, who we all know and hate, Wheels, and the people are, and how hard was it to try and to parse that and make it fit into what is obviously a populace that is ready for Remember the Alamo, but a governor who we all know really isn't if he doesn't think it puts money in his back pocket.
Well, I tried not to weave that governor directly into this. To me, having spent a chunk of my life in Texas for work purposes, several weeks at a time, I have a distinct love of the Texan people and the Texas state, and nothing but respect for it. And to me, it was important to kind of weave that into the second book as an integral part of who a character is. You know, you want to really upset Texans, take a piss on the Alamo. It's going to be, you know, bad shit's going to happen. And we really get a good glimpse at that, I think, in the second book. It's not a real spoiler since it's on the cover.
All right, let me get into this next one then. Alphyrus, you just had your question answered. Let's see. Rick Duke of Malta asks, "How was Karen on the list of 188?" And
You know, I never actually explained that. First of all, I love the use of the name Karen to describe her because she totally is a Karen. Betrays her family, betrays her brother, betrays her
yeah,
father.
I have to pause and just say I know that you already know this based on my reaction when we interviewed you on the Future Conflict show, but that was absolutely my favorite scene. There was you can ask my wife. I was yelling and screaming like yes. And she was like, "What?" And I'm like, "You have to read a book, and then you're gonna think I'm a psychopath." But like, yes.
You know, for her to be on the list, she just had to be up and rising, and that's, you know, when you're dealing with a totalitarian regime, you don't need a lot of excuses to kill people. You just have to look at them and go, where are they at on an org chart? And she was rising, and
Yep.
so they eliminated her.
It's very CCP, modern CCP. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. You're going to see a little bit more of that in book 5 too. We introduced the People's Wardens program, which is political officers being seated into the military. Commissars.
Yeah, gee, what would that be like, Blaine?
Not good. Not good.
Oh, I was meaning more like I think we're pretty much getting there, but
No, we haven't quite got it yet. They're trying. I look forward to a change in command at some point.
don't we all? Mark James de Cio says, "Hi Blaine, I have a silly question about New America in quotes. I know you have settled on the name for the new crazy country, but were there other names you considered?"
No. And to me, it was all about branding, and they settle on a brand for it early on. I tried to come up with, you know, the United States of blank, and you know, they don't want United States. There's a distinct call later in the series for a new constitutional convention to more or less do away with the state structures altogether. That the state structures are seen as an impediment for the FedGov to be able to implement its programs. So there's a lot of push for that. And I could see them, when you look at how they've been trying to rewrite history and change every aspect of our lives, I was like, they'll just rebrand it as something new. And of course, new then led to New America. So was it great? Probably not the best, but you know, coming out of a government organization, it sounded very like something they would do. From the people who brought you COVID.
All right, now there are some chat. There's some questions in here that I love. that if we were on Rumble only, I would ask them in an unfiltered format. But there are a few of these that I am going to reword them in such a way that the answers don't get us taken off of YouTube.
Oh, okay.
This following is not one of those. Just know that they're coming up. A random string of numbers asks, what happens to the billionaires of the world, specifically Bill Gates?
I don't address Bill Gates directly, and I don't have an intention to. There's a very light reference, I think, in Confederacy or in Greater Tyranny, that a lot of them flee the country. They simply pack up and go. It's not considered a place that they want to reside in, because people are taking their money and reappropriating it to the masses, or redistribution of wealth takes place. So a lot of the billionaires just up and leave. I don't address Bill Gates directly because I don't like the guy, and I don't like giving him any airtime whatsoever.
All right. So let me come back. I'll fire us his second question. He says, also, good job faking me out. I thought, oh, this isn't a question. This is just a comment. I thought the big bad was Pelosi. And then it was very clearly AOC afterwards. Yeah. Yeah, me too, actually.
Well, for legal reasons, I can't say for sure that was AOC, but it was AOC. You know, she's, because everybody thinks she's a rube. And I see this on the internet all the time. She's an idiot. She's a moron. And I'm like, but you're talking about her. She's taking a page out of Trump's book. She's being outrageous so that you're talking about her. And you're talking about her gives her power, gives her authority, and gives her standing and credibility. Even if she's a moron.
Yeah, in my opinion, she is the human personification of something. I'm going to get a little deep here. As you guys may know, I study a lot about propaganda and the various different countries who do it, and the techniques and all that kind of stuff. And she makes me think of something that I heard a Russian propagandist, one of the heads of Russian propaganda, actually talk about, of synthesizing reality TV and politics. And she is definition, like, just, she's so spot on.
Well, she's dangerous too, because she's a true believer, and true believers are definitely the most dangerous of all characters. And she completely believes some of the stuff she says to the point of ridiculousness. You know, and you know, some of it's becoming reality. We all laughed when she proposed the Green New Deal. Well, now we're starting to have to live it.
Factual. You know, can I ask? You feel free to just deny and say, hey, maybe you'll find out in a later book. But is the New America thing, like unto what we're seeing in the real world, tied more to an international movement, or is that one of the ways in which your fictional reality differs, is that you don't?
I'm not going to tie it to anything bigger and broader. I may make some references down the road to it, but that's not part of the major arcs for the characters.
Okay.
There's definitely more ties between Mexico and Canada coming up in book 5, and that becomes, I think, there's a bigger play coming in there.
Okay, fantastic. Let's get down into some more viewer questions. The following question has been edited by me live. Did you consult a research about the armored car shape, or did you consult experts when researching about the armored car shape charges?
That was the very first chapter of the book I wrote, probably 10 years ago, maybe more. It was right after 9/11. I sat with a friend who was a special forces person, and we were talking about how the World Trade Center had come down, and we were just having dinner. And he goes, well, you know, you don't need to do that much explosives to take down a building. And he walked me through the very scenario that you get in the book. And that night I went home and documented it, because I was like, this is really good. I don't know where I'm going to go with it, but I'm going to go there at some point.
Yeah, it turns out it takes some real specific know-how and some real specific scenarios to get a building to just fall in on itself like that.
Well, yeah.
I mean, unironically, Not really. Yes and no. I was going to say this when I saw those or when I heard those scenes, I was taken back to the first, the Yemenis trying and winding up with rider vans and what have you, and Ryder's ultimate demise. And as a guy who spent a decade working for U-Haul, it's one of those things where when you get that kind of truck, you can, and by that I mean a U-Haul truck or a Ryder truck, you can either go big or go home. You need something to direct it, and the perfect solution to directing the blast, which is why it failed the first time, was an armored car where it turns a dummy charge into a shaped charge.
Yeah. It really was. He walked me through it in painstaking detail and was pointing actually at the building that I use in the description, going, here's how I would take that building down. And I was like, okay. And, this was somebody who knew what he was doing. I don't credit him because, we haven't talked in years and I don't want him to get dragged into it. I don't know where his political beliefs fall or whether he wants the attention, but, yeah, it was somebody who actually walked me through that scenario. So in terms of research, yeah, that came to me first. That was part of the earliest editions that I was looking at for this book. Originally, it was going to be called Twilight's Last Gleaming. There were so many changes to it at that point. And the book stalled for many years where I had parts of it written, but I didn't like the overall flow of the plot. And it wasn't until the rise of Donald Trump that I realized I was finally into an era where I could tie this into some of the real life things happening and make it a little more pertinent.
Yeah, the mechanics of it, the mechanics of every time they do that trick is perfect. In that, like I said, the World Trade Center the first time, they were parked in the right spots. They knew where to be parked. They just didn't have the kind of a vehicle that would direct the charge. And it turns out that a Brinks car is exactly what you need to get a shaped charge out of a dumb bomb like that.
Yeah.
All right. For purposes of not getting us hauled off of YouTube, I'm going to call this. We're going to move to the next one. Let's see here. Derna, and I'm going to say I don't quite know what you mean by the first part of this, but I'll just ask it as you said it. If you don't have a reliable editor, how do you emotionally detach yourself from your writing to make rewrites and edits?
How do I emotionally detach myself? Well, most of all, the rewrites are more English style things than, gee, throw this chapter out, put in a new chapter here. And I'm open to suggestion because I'm not perfect, and I know that. And my wife will, if you want, I can bring her down. She can tell you too. So I don't consider myself a perfect writer by any stretch of the imagination. So, I do look for feedback as I go through things. Certain things I take, certain things I don't. You have to be willing to look at what you're doing, which is you're producing a product for consumption by the mass market. So, I have to take a look at that sometimes and go, maybe my idea was good, but sometimes somebody else offers a better idea. And if it's better, then by all means, I adopt it.
All right. Hey guys, we're getting close to the end of an hour, and I want to say, I don't want to take up too much more of Blaine's time, but if you have a few more questions that you want to toss in here, make sure you get them in so that we can get them covered, and then we'll try and get out the door. Terry Nee, who is a channel member, and I want to say thank you so much, Terry, says, Blaine, are you aware of the William R. Forstchen books?
No, I'm not.
Neither am I. Let me pull this up. Then I'll ask one that you can answer while I try and get us an answer on what those are. Random String of Numbers asks, you mentioned that the new Gov gave the military a raw deal. Will you go into specifics of that in the future books?
You get a good glimpse of that in Confederacy, because you'll actually see what happened at the Pentagon when the liberation / the fall took place. So you will actually see what happened there. I think it's an interesting twist on many things, and I think it's sad, but it's easy to see taking place. I think the military is playing both sides of the fence, leaning strong towards the New America side. I'm going to mess that up a little bit because our guys are willing to take much more greater risk in America, and so it's going to be a little more. It's a great interplay that's taking place.
All right, and I looked it up, and it looks like he is a American history professor and author at Montreat College in Montreat, North Carolina, who has written a series of books in which he depicts another alternate Civil War. Hey, it looks like Stan was able to join us here for a minute. Stan, how you doing?
Hi, Stan.
How are you doing?
Doing good. We're about ready to. We're getting into the final questions. Did you have some comments or questions for Blaine while we give chat the ability to get their last ones in?
No, I'll defer to the chat.
Actually, you know what? Stan gives me the perfect opportunity because the kids have decided they're about done with me doing this. So, Blaine, I have one last question, and that is, when is the next book hitting Audible?
Audible, they're starting the recording. I know they started it a couple weeks ago. My general experience is it takes 3 weeks or so to do the recording. Then they send it to me and I have to listen to it, which is a painful process. I don't like listening to somebody read my books because I know how
I'll listen to it for you.
Yeah, I know, but I have to do it and compare it against the actual text. So
yeah, that's one of the things that I've offered a couple of authors to do this, and I think that most people who think, oh, it'd be easy to just get somebody to read a book, don't realize that, like, hey, that had an inflection, and the author had an intention for that inflection to imply something, and if a director's not properly communicating that, the results can be bad.
Yeah,
indeed.
And so it's 11 hours or 13 hours of listening to it. Then there's changes that are made. Then it takes, honestly, for the changes, that's another week or so for those to be recorded, re-put in, re-listened to. Then you look at it. The process with Amazon takes several weeks for
March.
From when you submit the files, because they run it through some sort of AI or something to make sure that it's not horribly offensive or whatever. And it takes weeks for that to go through. So different publishers do it at different times. Defiance tends to do it a little bit later with the audiobook. My new publisher, Wargate, they do it right up front so that when the book drops, you get paperback, Audible, and
I like that
all at the same time. And
right.
I personally like that best. It's hard to go back to people and go, okay, well, now the Audible book's ready, and they're, it's hard to get people to engage a second time.
I'll also admit that I like it because of the whisper sync feature that it enables, so that if I want to read a part, I can read it, and then if I want to listen, I can listen.
There you go. And so, Chet, so what he's saying is don't even start looking until like March.
Yeah, I think it's going to be February or March, depending on where. And it also depends on, I haven't heard how the narrator's availability is. I'm using the same guy, though, because there's no point in getting somebody new. If people
correct.
Narrative,
you're absolutely correct.
Narrator
sir.
Continuity is crucial. I appreciate
You're absolutely
that.
correct. All right, so I'm going to bow out. And I'm going to bow out and turn it over to Stan to be the third slot. And awesome books, both 1 and 2. Waiting with bated breath for the Audible number 3. Love you guys. Have a good night.
You too. Bye, Sniper.
See you, Sniper. So I think you have a whole new series of books that you can write on Civil War, and that's one that's focused on Brazil. So.
Yeah, it's I'm learning going through our sessions. I'm like most Americans. I'm kind of ignorant of what's going on. I've been actually listening to the council sessions on it to kind of get up to speed as to what's really going on. It's wild down there.
Well, Lula was certified today, and there's this cryptic message from Costa about Bolsonaro still having a constitutional option, that involves the military, which I sort of scratch my head and say, well, then why'd you wait till now? But I don't know. We'll see.
Hey, so I've got a couple more from chat here. So Mark James DeSocio says, more of a comment here, but Blaine, I'm a liberal, eat gods. But I really enjoyed Blue Dawn and have started on book 2. Your audience may be bigger than you intended. And I'm going to say before I let him answer that I suspected that there would be a bunch of classic liberals that are still stuck on that side of the fence for various socioeconomic reasons that probably are secret fans.
Look, I labeled it a conservative political thriller just simply to be respectful of how people spend their money. I encourage everybody to read the book. It's always good to get a different perspective, and you're not going to get a better opportunity than a piece of fiction. If you're reading it as a nonfiction book, if I were to tell you this is how this is going to play out, you'd be bored stiff and you would sit and argue about it. It's hard to argue with fiction. And if the story's entertaining, it doesn't matter.
And the Democrats have learned that it's hard to argue with fiction because they lie about everything, and it's just like, well, no, you are, but so
So, hey guys,
so I'm just here as a representative of the last Civil War to look for parallels and learn some lessons for the next one. So.
Anyway. All right, so I've got a couple more questions, and then chat while I get him to answer this question. I got something that I want you to do. This has been more of an author interview, and it was supposed to be more of a book club. So why don't we get a couple of classic? What were your put in the chat? Just your favorite scene, just a brief like, hey, I really like this, or personally, again, mine was Karen's very timely demise. So let's hear about what your favorite scenes were while he answers this next one. Chris says, please, dear Prophet Blaine, does Canada do a reversal and become super based as they must be the opposite of the US? We need to win a shred of hope.
I have plans for Canada. That's all I'm going to say in the series. Trudeau has really soured me to Canada, and I think there's going to be a whole different set of problems in Canada that are going to be fun for me to play with.
Mads, you had a question first, and I totally didn't see the follow-up answer, so I'm just going to ask him in the format you gave me, and we'll see what he says. How about that? Mads actually gave us the first question, but I asked her to clarify. She says, when did you begin the process of writing your first book? And I asked her if that meant like the first book of this series or like your first book ever. So maybe you answer both.
Well, I started being an author back when I was in college. I wrote editorial and I wrote for radio commercials. And then as soon as I graduated college, 1984, 1985, I started doing fiction writing back then for game companies, and I really enjoyed that, and something I still do today. In terms of this book, the actual earnest writing of this started in 2019. The final rewrite was done early in I want to say around the May period of 2020, so it was kind of queued up in that time zone. I may be off a month or two. It's really hard to remember dates anymore.
True.
May I ask a question?
Oh, certainly.
Okay. So I'm an interested amateur student of the creative process, and that's particularly true with authors. And I'm interested if there is a particular sort of routine that you always go through as you sit down to write something. Okay, like for instance, Hemingway had the portable typewriter. He wrote standing up at a desk with a daiquiri on the desk or whatever. I mean, is there a process that is the same every time as you sit down to write? Does the room have to be the same, the ambient sounds, or?
No, I can write just about anywhere. The key is for me, I have to write a little bit every day. So even when we go on vacation in a few weeks, I told my wife, I'm bringing the computer simply because if I don't write every day, if I go back to doing it cold turkey again, it's a slower wrap up.
It's like working out. You get muscle atrophy and
Yeah, you have to constantly be at it and be doing it. I actually do some of my writing in my sleep. I mean, like I will dream scenes,
Hmm.
get up
I do
and
that.
go jot them down because they're good and certain things come out of that. But I try to write every day, and I'm a full time writer now. So I quit my day job at Ernst and Young after 25 glorious years of working at an accounting firm, and now what I do is write. So I exercise it. It doesn't mean I'm writing a book. I can be writing an editorial piece. I can be writing emails, but I have to exercise that part of my brain, or
No, I understand.
honestly, it's too erratic and it gets frustrating.
So Terry Nee wants to know if you were involved in Zork.
No,
So
no.
that's a big negative. There you go.
But it's sad that I remember what Zork is.
Yeah, so do I. Not getting a whole lot of it, guys. Give me your favorite scene. You mean I see the question there. Favorite scene in Blue Dawn, or okay, yeah, just in Blue Dawn. We're keeping this just for we've already spoiled it for Blue Dawn people, but let's not get into the next one yet. I haven't fully finished it. So Mad says Canada probably turns into a maple swamp. Yeah.
Who would have thought that America would look up to Canadian truckers as icons of freedom and liberty? What's happened up in Canada has been very depressing to see. I don't like what I'm seeing unfolding up there. Wild stuff. Trudeau is wow. My favorite thing of this last 2 months was when Chi basically told him you're an idiot and walked away before he could even rebuttal him.
Yeah. Let me grab this one here real quick. Please confirm 2 published and number 3 dropping in January. Then what?
Number 4 is in the hands right now of the publisher. So I don't have a date yet. I'm an author. I get the dates after everybody else gets the dates. So, that's just the nature of being in this business. So, I don't know for sure when 4 will drop. I'm at almost 80,000 words right now on book 5, and it's going to go to 120,000 words. So that's happening. I'm hoping next year we get 3, 4, and 5, or at least 3 and 4 next year.
All right. Actually, Stan, I want to hear what your favorite scene in the book was before
I honestly have not yet read it.
You haven't read it yet? Oh my goodness. Okay, I think I know what I'm getting you for Christmas.
I know.
Would you listen to the audiobook if I got it for you?
I'll take care of it and I'll read it. I'm coming into that 2-week period at Christmas time where I sort of pick like 4 or 5 different things and I read voraciously during that period of time. So
I hear that.
That's when the email goes off and all the rest of the stuff goes off, and I do something that exercises that muscle that Blaine was talking about.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you had excellent parents.
I'm here to try to understand how in the world he's as prolific as he is,
right?
Given the amount of time that it takes to devote to this.
There's certain trade-offs, Stan. I don't follow any sporting teams. I don't know anything about sports.
Okay,
never have. Don't follow them. Don't care.
When
everybody was like, "Aren't you excited about the World Cup?" I'm like, "Is that happening? Are we still in it?"
I'm halfway there. I'm a reformed sportist, but so I've done that part. What next?
Yeah, I basically I get up in the morning, I go work out at the gym, I come home, I shower up, I write. I go upstairs occasionally, see my wife, come back down, write, see my wife again, come back down.
You hear that, chat? He said gym. That's important.
This last year, I started. A friend of mine got me working out. I've dropped 33 pounds. I've actually in better physical shape than I've been probably my entire life in terms of lifting weights and stuff. And I've started going back to do some stuff. most people don't notice, I do, for a while, I played the bagpipes, and I'm a big bagpiper. I really was more self-taught than anything else, and I've actually
Wow,
started going back to it. So I keep on my desk my practice chanter.
that's awesome.
And so when I finish a section or a particular scene, I will practice for a few seconds, put that down, and then go on to the next thing. That's kind of my reward, is I get to play a little bit.
Well,
That's cool.
and a little bit of that. I mean, I suppose that's slightly a little bit of that. God, what do they call that? The Pomodoro method, where you try and break up your attention so that you're not doing the same thing constantly for a long
Yeah.
time.
The other trade-off, Stan, is I forget people's real names. You put me in a room full of people, I can't tell who they are, but I know all my characters' names and I know their voices and everything else. So, yeah, there's certain trade-offs you get when you do this as a living. And especially with me, I have a lot of characters going on, and I've got several books going at once. So the dialogues and the scenes kind of unfold, and it's just a juggling act. I try to do an outline for each book, not a detailed one, but more in the case of Blue Dawn, I always go, where am I going to take the characters? And what am I going to put the characters through in this book? So that's part of the fun too.
Durna says, self-taught piper, your wife must be a saint.
As long as I'm on the practice chanter, she doesn't care. It's when I break out the real pipes that she's like, okay, no, we're not doing
It's the drone that gets her. All right.
Yeah.
So Mark James says, last question, Blaine, when you write, do you have a word count that you try and get to, or do you just write as sort of story and emotion and things dictate?
I rate it. It's kind of like how Gandalf, wizard arrives exactly on time. I just write, and if it's short, it's short. If it's long, it's long. I don't shoot for a particular word count. So some chapters come out 3,000 words, some chapters come out 5,000 or 6,000 words. Doesn't matter. You don't want to. I think as a writer, I've noticed some authors, it seems like they're sticking stuff into chapters to make them fit a certain length. And I think that's a mistake. You just tell the story and use all 5 of your senses to do it, so that the characters tell you what they hear, what they taste, what they smell, what they feel, things along those lines. If you do that, you write what you need to write. On a given day, I will write anywhere between 1,500 and 6,000 words on a book.
Ooh, well, that's where nature comes from.
How the day goes.
I love it. And if I may just kind of square it up to the one area that I do have substantial expertise in, that sounds a lot like the advice that I give my students when I'm coaching marksmanship, which is what makes a good marksman is what makes a good anything else than its consistency. It's learning to be able to do it the same thing consistently every time. So
yeah.
All right, everybody, I really appreciate all of you here. I'm going to give you guys 1 month, and maybe just a little bit before we have the book club on the next one. That will allow any of you who didn't read the first one to read the first one and then get caught up on the second one. As Sniper can tell you, you can do the whole thing in a weekend if you really pump your way through it, right? Get out there, buy those books, and come prepared next time with some favorite scenes, some more questions, and we'll take advantage of our time with Blaine. Thank you all so much.
One last question.
Sure.
Go ahead.
If I could. Who do you read? Who do you enjoy reading?
Oh,
and
that's an excellent question.
That's an important question given the amount of effort that you put into writing and so forth. Who do you admire?
I've been reading all sorts of stuff. Because I've started doing my own little show where I interview authors, and I won't interview them unless I read their books. I'm reading a wide diversity of authors right now. I like Rick Pardoe for military sci-fi. He does a fantastic job. Declan Flynn. I've started reading some of his hard sci-fi stuff, or more space opera, but I actually really enjoyed it. He's just a guy I happened to bump into on Facebook. Military history.
That was one.
I actually like Gordon Rea. His look at the Overland campaign during the Civil War is probably one of the best history books series ever written.
Mhm.
I mean, he starts with the Wilderness Campaign, Spotsylvania Courthouse, goes down to the North Anna, and I'm about to jump in on the Petersburg book. He does such a good job of military history. In terms of other fiction I read, Harry Turtledove, the guy's a screaming communist and socialist, and he's a nutbag, but he writes great alternate history, and I enjoy that.
So one question about your affinity for Civil War history and so forth. Living in Virginia, particularly living in Central Virginia, I know that for me it meant much more when I read it because everything that I was reading about was within driving distance, and I would go and visit the battlefields at wherever. Do you do the same or no?
I live on the Wilderness Battlefield.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So I mean, I got to be honest with you. I take my grandson to the battlefield. I was at Manassas when we lived in Manassas. I was at the battlefield so much I did my own tours, and the park rangers were like, "Hey, go with him. He knows what he's talking about." I love this stuff, and I live it. And to me, it's one thing to read it in a book and even look at the map. The map doesn't do it justice. When you go to Manassas, you have to see the undulation in the terrain to know how Jackson and his troops laid up there, and couldn't be seen. And you can't get that from a map, and you can't get it from a book. You have to touch it. You have to walk it. You have to feel it. And I'll go. I like going on the days that the battles actually took place, or at least of the month that the battles took place. I really enjoyed going to Antietam. I've been wanting to get back. I haven't been to Gettysburg in a long time, and I'm really hoping to get back there soon. And I want to walk Monocacy, which is a battlefield I haven't been to yet. I really want to do Monocacy just because it's such a crucial battle, and for the fate of the Union, and it doesn't get a lot of play. So I really want to venture there. But yeah, I read a lot of Civil War history books. I mean,
I'd recommend that you take a couple of days, and it takes that, and do the Shenandoah Valley campaign, Jackson Shenandoah, and get a copy of the maps. I forgot the guy's name who was the cartographer, who was the difference.
Jed Hotchkiss.
Hotchkiss, yes. Get a copy of Hotchkiss's maps.
I do. I have it.
Okay.
Yeah,
if you check that out, it's pretty awesome.
I've actually been to Cedar Creek. I want to do the Field of Lost Shoes. I really want to go up to Newmarket and do that. I'm going down. I'm doing a true crime book, and I'm going to Stanton, and I'm looking forward to kind of checking out the low end of the valley a little bit. Stanton's always a neat place to go, and I got to do some research there locally, so I'm going to enjoy myself while I'm there.
Apropos of absolutely nothing else, but if you go to Stanton, check out the theater, the Blackfriar Theater. Do you know about the Blackfriar?
No.
Okay. There is a gem, and any of you within the sound of my voice, if you're within reach of Stanton, Virginia, there is a replica of the Blackfriar Theater in Stanton, and the Blackfriar was the original theater that Shakespeare's plays were performed. And there's a company there, the Shakespeare Company, that is the most talented group of people I have ever been around. They put on, and the Blackfriar is a direct copy of it. And the seating is the same. And one of the things that was done back then is you could actually pay to sit on the stage. Okay. And you can go there and watch these people put on Shakespeare the way that Shakespeare was done at the time. It's the most remarkable experience. And I encourage you at least once to sit on the stage.
I'm in.
Because it is absolutely remarkable. I've never seen that group of people, and they've been together now for quite some time. Most remarkable, talented set of people I've ever seen.
Oh, I'm going to have some fun then. Virginia has a lot to offer in the way of the Civil War, and I do want to go at some point to Shiloh. I've always wanted to walk Shiloh in Tennessee and check that out. It's just one of those things I got to squeeze on the list.
Hey, I've got one more thing to squeeze in because it turns out that while we were yabbing, we got one last question from chat.
All right.
And this one's just a little more entertaining. Have you looked at the Amazon reviews? Alphyrus says his favorite is the guy who thinks the entire series is satire and is really all about January 6th.
Yeah, there's a group of crazed lefties who don't read the book. They said it's quanon fiction. It's Proud Boy porn. It's that I'm projecting something about January 6th and it's all a joke. I appreciate the fact they think I'm that creative and that I'm that crazy. It's not. Sometimes a good cigar is just a good cigar.
As Freud once said. Yeah.
So there's no Ray Epps analog then in the book. Is that correct?
No, not yet.
Okay.
But it's a big series. So
Got it.
All
I may
right.
make him the governor of Montana.
That will not stand. I can tell you that.
All right, folks. And with that said, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much, Blaine, for your time. We really appreciate you. I think we probably delayed probably half a book by the hour that you spent here.
I'm done for the night, believe me.
All right. So chat, go ahead and get read up. If you haven't done so already, read the second book, which is available now. We'll plan for roughly about a month and a half out. You'll get notification about a week before we do it. And we appreciate all of you. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks.